What's up, everybody? Today I want to talk about Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail, Final Fantasy XIV's worst rated expansion. Players have given it a mixed review on Steam, and it currently has a, I believe, 6.5 user score on Metacritic, which is unusual because Final Fantasy XIV is a story-based MMO that wins awards for its expansions. So today I want to give my thoughts on it, on the story, the characters, the zones, just an overall review of Dawntrail as a whole right now. And this will be a review with spoilers so I can give context to some of the main things that happened. And I will preface this by saying these are all just my opinions. Please don't be a weird boy in the comments. This expansion was far from perfect, and criticism is good to talk about. Finished the MSQ about a week ago, but I wanted to give it a few days to spend more time in the zones, do the extremes, so I can give it a real, honest, proper review. So here's the good, the bad, and some real hot topics. So let's start with the story as a whole. And I thought it was great. I thought it was really good. The story is basically in two parts. There are two stories here, really. There's the Succession for the Throne story, and then the story afterwards, which focuses on Zeraljar and Queen Sphene. And overall, I think both of these stories were fantastic. The Exploring the New Lands Succession story, it was fairly slow-paced, but it was full of new cultures, new characters, and small stories, and I thought it was fantastic. It was kind of what I expected Dawntrail to be. And then leading into the second part of the story, again, constantly getting these new mini stories, these new plots opening up, and more really cool zones. I think the story they told, like if you were to bullet point out what the story was, I thought it was great. I thought it was the usual Final Fantasy XIV high quality story. I think they did an amazing job with all the new races, the mini stories, having things like the Pelu mini trading game thing, the mountain giant people who told their like sad story of how they became weakened, and I thought that was fantastic. Everything kind of leading to the fourth zone was just so good. I really felt like we're on this new adventure. And then when you start to feel a little bit bored, it's kind of coming to a bit of an end, you get hit with the Oblivion story in Zone 4 and the Endless and all the living memory stuff. This really did feel like it was just a normal, good Final Fantasy story with some really well-told, emotional and engaging plot twists. It's good. I enjoyed most of, if not all of them, and felt very engaged for the most part. On top of this, the zones, the music, and all the instance content complement the story really, really well. So I do have some issues with the story, which I'm going to talk about at the end. I kind of want to put the negatives all at the end because I want to talk about the good first, because I think people are getting too hung up on the problems with the MSQ and the problems with Dawntrail. But I think there's a lot to love here. There is a lot they did really well, and I want to talk about it. First up, let's talk about the battle content. Everything in this review is going to have pros and cons, good and bad, because, it's good to give that sort of balance. When I talk about the battle content, I cannot fault it. I can't. It is 10 out of 10. I've done the MSQ, the optional dungeons, most of the current extremes, and just everywhere, wow. Every single part of the battle content or duty content, whatever you want to call it, is incredible. It feels like they've upped the difficulty or upped the chaos a bit more in the story dungeons, which I personally really enjoyed. We went in with like Savage Raiders to some of the story dungeons as part of the MSQ and wiped on some bosses, which is just, it's great. Having that chaos of learning new things is really good. And when you're faced with these big threats in these dungeons or trials, and then you just breeze them, it kind of undermines them a little bit. But having that challenge in the story really, really upped my enjoyment of kind of everything we had. And then even the aesthetics of these dungeons. Vanguard, one of the coolest and most futuristic bosses, and the loot matched. The final dungeon in Living Memory going through Alexandria and the throwbacks to Final Fantasy IX was just absolutely jaw-dropping. And then we had some really unique ones like the ghost-based optional dungeon. I won't ruin it if you haven't seen it, but it's amazing. Hats off to the devs that made any sort of dungeon, trial, and battle content. They may be some of the best we've ever had. And then the extremes just take it to a whole new level. I think they were both incredible. I ran them over the last few days and I've got 10 clears on both of them, and I just want to go back in. As I'm recording this right now, all I can think about is queuing back in for more extremes. I think they were fantastic. Next, let's talk about the 6 new zones we got in Dawntrail. I thought they were great for the most part. My favorites were the Pelu and the Giant Zone. I thought that was incredible. How they kind of broke it into 2 parts where you do one and then another later kind of made it feel like you had more zones to go to. I thought that was incredible. Similar story with Yak Tel, but that was a little less interesting for me. But overall, all of the Succession zones I think were really, really good. And then you go to Heritage Found, which is just out of this world, literally. And not only does it look beautiful, it was just full of different areas and things to explore. It's honestly so rammed with stuff there. It's probably one of the best zones we've had ever. I genuinely think it's one of my favorite zones in the game. I absolutely adore it. I even think the desert zone was pretty good. The story there was a little filler. It was a little lacking, and I want to talk about that later. But the zone itself is pretty good. It's a desert with some cool little, Western themed places. It was interesting, it was unique, and it was pretty cool. There's one zone I didn't like, and I thought Living Memory was a bit of a disappointment. I just didn't like it. I know there's going to be people who loved it. There's some cool stories from the MSQ there, but overall, as a zone, I really, really, really didn't like it. The main issue with it is kind of through the big spoiler, obviously, but as you go through the MSQ, you zap it of life. But not only that, but you zap it of color, which means all you're left with is a gray, dull zone with pretty boring music going through it. It just feels like they ruined a otherwise good zone. It was a pretty cool zone to get to when it was all lit up and fancy. But going there now, I've been doing hunt trains there, I've been gathering there, I've been fate farming there, I've maxed out the fate thing there, and it's just boring. It's just a boring, empty grey zone. And I don't really know why they've done that, but yeah, I guess they were going for like an Ultima Thule type vibe, but I personally don't like it. Moving on to the cities, these are some of the best we've ever had. Tully is jazzy, fun, full of culture, and Solution 9 is just stunning. I don't think we've ever seen a design change this hard for a major city, and they've done so well. I can't fault it. If you do want to fault it, you could say there's a lot of empty space that's unused there, but you know, we might see more vendors get added as we progress through the raids and the alliance raids, things like that. But overall, just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Just the drones, the bikes, the cars, everything just feels like you're in the future. 10 out of 10, absolutely stunning. And they're kind of the big things I remember as being super positive when I try and give a proper review of Dawntrail. The main parts of the story, the really cool new zones, the new characters, the amazing battle content. All of these things just made it a good expansion. And I think once the story's over, you are left with the zones, the battle, the music. And that's kind of what they did best, I think. So for an expansion that's going to go on for a few years, I think we're in a really, really good spot. However, with all that said, I don't think this was a 10 out of 10 expansion. It doesn't even come top 3 for me, which is strange when you think I've said so much positive about it. And I think that also matches when you look at the reviews. It's not got a 0. It's not getting, you know, really bad reviews, but it's not smashing the records like it usually is. And I want to talk about that because I do think there were some big problems that kind of reduced my enjoyment of Dawntrail, and you might be able to relate to. First up is filler. Filler or low content. The pure amount in Dawntrail was too much, in my opinion. The pure amount of reading unvoiced, unimportant text and filler quests just really put me to sleep at parts of the MSQ. I said how incredible the story was, and I stand by that. It was good. However, it felt like at times we weren't doing the MSQ. It felt like we were doing yellow side quests alongside the MSQ. And then even when you were in some good parts of the MSQ, it felt like I felt like I wasn't playing. It felt like you would go, you know, talk to Wuk Lamat, you'd go talk to them, and then you would be just in an unvoiced movie for an hour. And then maybe you'd get free from all the cutscenes, and it would be go and talk to 3 people. You go and talk to 3 people, and then you go back into more cutscenes and more just talking, dialogue, most of it unvoiced. And then when you do get free from like a big you've sat reading for like 20 minutes and you finally get free and you get your quest, and it's go talk to 3 villagers, go check on 3 villagers, go pick up 3 items, and then you go back to Wuk Lamat or you go back to wherever you were, and it's more 20 minutes more of just click, read. And I don't think they delivered it well a lot of the time. And then I think if you put that big loop into what we're actually doing, this is a adventure. We're adventuring to a new continent. And I think they got a little bit lazy with the actual adventure side of things here. I want to go fight things, discover things, find cool secrets and things, and be in the zones with our traveling companions. Many parts of it so far, at times, just feel like I'm doing side quests. I feel like I'm doing like a random side quest or like a blue quest. There's not much main quest energy. A lot for like the last, like, I don't know, a long time. And if you're not sure what I mean by filler, a good example is we found the door to the City of Gold. Obviously, spoiler. We found the door to the City of Gold, and then we went to the desert. And that entire zone, just look at that zone. If you take that entire zone out of the MSQ, other than getting there on the getting to the next zone by train, there's nothing. If you take the entire zone out, the MSQ is the same. So yeah, overall, the story was very, very positive and had the potential to be a 10 out of 10 story or a 9.5 out of 10 story. But this really dropped it for me, dropped my enjoyment of the expansion quite a lot. And now let's talk about the second issue I kind of had with Dawntrail. And it's a hot topic. It's the one everyone's talking about. It's Wuk Lamat. And I can feel you going down to the comments already. I can feel it, but I want to talk about it. Let me explain. I don't have an issue with the English voice actor or the character as a whole, but more how they were written into the story. In the first zone, people were saying like, people are leaving in their reviews, negative reviews saying they don't like Wuk Lamat, and I was like, how could you not like Wuk Lamat? I've got it now. I don't like her. Just every single thing you do, she has to be there. Every single thing you find, she has to tell you what it is. Every single place you go, she has to show you to it. Like, just let me play the game, bro. Firstly, I love them at the start. Like from the pre-patch all the way up to the first trial, I thought the succession story with Wuk Lamat was incredible. A lot of people hate on the first part of the story. A lot of people dislike the going around the zones, collecting those things and unlocking the sea. A lot of people didn't like that. I loved it. I thought it was great. And I thought Wuk Lamat did good. I thought this was a good character for this zone. And turning them from some battle-hardened, naive person into someone who cared about their people and was fit and ready to rule was a well-written story, and the character fit that story. And when they got the throne, it was a really good ending to their story as a whole around MSQ level 95. But then it goes in a different direction. We get characters like Graha, Estinian, and Urianger back in the team. It's like old times, you know, the Scions are back, and we're going on like Scion business. The whole gang goes to stop the end of the world threat, you know what I mean? And we have talk of shards and ether, and there's just general Scion stuff. And this is where my issue with Wuk Lamat started. Every single cutscene, every single quest, everything we did from here on was still focused on Wuk Lamat. It didn't develop into this new zone, in my opinion. Loved her at the start, but I quickly grew to dislike them, and I felt like they were forced into the second half of the expansion, and they took away more than they added to it. I just couldn't see them. I couldn't stand seeing them take over every single cutscene and say the same dialogue as they'd said at the start of Dawntrail, when we had so many good characters around us that could have added so much more to the conversation. And yeah, I think that's the main issue. It's not that I wanted to be the main character, it's that it just eclipsed some really good characters that could have had good moments. Like when we got to Solution 9 for the first time, I wanted to hear like Urianger's thoughts on it. I wanted to see cool interactions with the twins or Estinian or Thancred getting into trouble, but we just didn't get anything. It was just all Wuk Lamat, the whole game, the whole expansion through their eyes. And yeah, I'll show this infographic as well over who got the most dialogue in the MSQ, and it kind of backs it up. And you can see how wild it is that Queen Sphene is second, and we don't even see them until like the last third of the game. Erenvel again, even though he has so much dialogue, it's in the later part of the game. It shows how little everyone else had to say throughout the entire 10 huge MSQ levels, even though they were following us around most of the time. Why so many people are frustrated with this? That we just may as well have not been in the expansion for the most part. This should have just been a single player game of Wuk Lamat's adventures, because we didn't really contribute, as neither did any of the party around us. So yeah, from a character I really liked at the start, this quickly grew on me to be one that I just get frustrated of just the constant overusing of them. But yeah, that's where I am with Dawntrail. I've been playing it every single day. You know, I've maxed all the fates, done all the extremes, got my BIS, working towards the cool new mounts, looking forward to the raids. And as an MMO expansion, it's great. It's fantastic, right? It's amazing. The dungeons, trials, everything really we've seen as an MMO, it's really good. I can't really fault it. I don't think Dawntrail deserves the amount of hate it's receiving. I really don't. But at the same time, I don't think we should be defending lots of the problems with the MSQ as a story, because I think it's very important to point out the criticisms, and it wasn't the best. It wasn't the best story in my opinion. But yeah, again, all just my thoughts. If you massively disagree, that's completely fine. If you found it perfect and you had an amazing time, I'm happy for you, but lots of us didn't, and it's healthy to talk about it. So yeah, overall, big W of an expansion, excited for what's next, excited for the future, but hopefully some things in the storytelling part that they learn from. But that's it from me. I'd love to hear what you think of Dawntrail in the comments. Keep it sane. But that's it. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.